as always, to recognize that there is a father-mother dynamic going on within all of us, within the psyche. This is the great alchemy. This is the way that we come to realize that there is a new birth awaiting to happen within our own consciousness, and we must be fathers and mothers to ourselves in order to give this the just due that it deserves. We are going to be looking deeply today at how this new birth is to take place so that we awaken as the light beings and bring in a new reality. A reality that is devoid of harming life, a reality that no longer has war as the staple of global culture. And we want to look at how we all are contributing to this turning the swords into plowshares kind of a reality. So what we're going to explore today is defensiveness. And along with that, you can see defensiveness and anger kind of go hand in hand. So don't get defensive. I was just trying to figure out how you're just angry. It's really wonderful to see. Last week we talked about within the mindfulness tradition of Buddhism, they really put a lot of stock in the mindful exploration of what is called in Sanskrit Vedana, or feelings. And when you are mindfully exploring feelings like anger, you'll see that you have a label or a story as sort of the first experience that you have of your emotional state. There's a label, there's a story, there's an image, someone associated with it. And as you begin to mindfully breathe and quiet the restless mind and simply isolate that anger, that feeling, you begin to melt into it, and you go past just that beginning layer or patina of the emotion or feeling. And as you take the label off and you remove your story, what you'll find is there's just energy there. And as the Buddhists say, if you simply just observe without trying to fix or change or judge that energy, and you just observe it, you begin to transform it. So your observing consciousness is literally the alchemy that's going to transform your emotions from unwholesome to wholesome, right? From destructive to liberating or constructive. And it's doing this through this quiet, witnessing, peaceful observing. And what we see within even our scientific culture, especially with the founding of quantum mechanics, it's the observer of the experiment that is influencing the experiment. So below the labeling and the appearance level of matter and energy within concrete physical events, seemingly concrete, you have a flux world of subatomic particles that are always shifting and changing and blipping in and out of the quantum vacuum and appearing as this room and the bodies and the clothes and everything else. And when we observe in a certain way, the subatomic particles, as these experiments have shown, behave in a certain way. Our observation influences everything and actually changes the patterning and the flow pattern of how things are showing up in our observation. So that's why, that great quote from Sir James Jeans back in the early 20th century, who was one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, getting out of the whole Newtonian paradigm of billiard balls crashing into each other and this cause and effect solid state reality. He said, now that we're looking at the subatomic realm in quantum mechanics, the universe is far less like a giant machine and far more like a giant thought. So at the fundamental level of universe, it's more consciousness than material. And this is why we're going to shift our war-based culture. We're going to shift the way our societies are structured and run, because we're no longer going to perceive ourselves as stuck within time like we looked at last week. Seth gives that little bit of an illustration where he says, don't think of yourself like a fly in a bottle. You're not stuck in time. You're actually permeating all of time. And when you begin to use the power of your thought, you're going to change your physical environment, because you're doing it right now. Just had a conversation just a few minutes ago, how Seth is saying that we are unconsciously creating our world. We're unconsciously creating our body. We're unconsciously making this environment. What if we became conscious or mindful of what thoughts we are selecting and projecting? It would be a completely different environment, a completely different world. And one of the things we have to get over is our defensiveness. And what's really fascinating is that, unbeknownst to most of us, we actually are defending the fact that we are unworthy of this power. We're defending our unlovableness. Like, there's a defense that has you insisting you're unlovable. Like, this is what you start to see. It's a universal condition. Because if you really felt your lovableness, you would merge back into source consciousness. Because you would go to the source of love, knowing you're deserving of being where you truly belong, in a state of all-encompassing love. There is an unconscious defensiveness that has us feeling unlovable. And when we feel unlovable, we are projecting it. And as a result, we are making a world that is unlovable. It's really simple. Everything is flowing out of your consciousness. You're experiencing your mental state. And we are all, as human beings, in a collective agreement to continually, unconsciously at this point, project our insanity out onto the world and look for somebody else to be the cause and blame for it. Because if we were to withdraw those projections and take responsibility for our anger, we would have to face the pain of our unlovableness. Now, it doesn't stop there, thank God. Because the unlovableness is just this mistake in perception. It's this feeling that you have disconnected from your source and you don't know the way back. And it's put fear into the heart. And when we are afraid, as any other animal, any other creature, we attack. It's just the natural instinct. When you're afraid, you're anxious, you're prone to attack, you're prone to snap. And that's why he'll say in A Course in Miracles, I can escape this world of war, this world of pain, this world of suffering by giving up my attack thoughts. Did you come here to hear this morning? I hope so. Don't get defensive. Don't get angry. Because when you give up your attack thoughts, you actually come back to a state of realizing that you can be peace in the moment. That's, the other great injunction from A Course in Miracles is if you want to have peace, you have to teach peace to learn it. That's why he says this often. You're teaching all the time. Every one of us is teaching. And what are we teaching? If we think it's okay to attack sometimes, even if we don't attack in our personal life, if we think that it's okay for countries to attack other countries in self-defense or whatever reason we have, this idea of believing in the value of attack is going to put you in a world where attack is real and you are now in a world of war. You must give up your attack thoughts in order to escape this world war. And, we wouldn't have said anything like this probably a couple of years ago. But do you realize, we're kind of teetering oftentimes in the news. I look at the headlines. I oftentimes don't read the articles. But I'll see the headlines, and we're sort of, playing with the idea of World War III. Really being aggressive towards nuclear powers. How is that sane? How do we end that? How do we actually reverse the direction of that kind of psychopathy, that insanity? Well, the only way, you can't scream at people, you can't elect different politicians, because they're going to get bought and paid for by the same defense contractors that own both parties. They're just puppets for a hidden hand of big money. They all work for Goldman Sachs. They all work for the military-industrial complex. So you can't get at the changing of the world from the bodily level. But here's the thing, and I just heard this very recently. Every dollar, or rather, let's say it this way, every $100 that you have to give in taxes every year to the federal government, over $54 out of that 100 goes to the military-industrial complex. That we spend more money than the next 11 countries combined on war and military arms. What does that tell you? We're really defensive. We're really scared. That is an outward projection of an inner condition. So you don't want to blame the dark suits and the big business and the multinationals and the military contractors. They're going to actually have to change when you no longer play their game of being, a dupe in valuing attack and war. But the only way that you can have power in this equation is if you go within and change your consciousness. So that's what we're going to look at this morning. That was my rambling introduction. I hope it didn't make you angry or defensive. Why don't we actually calm the mind and prepare for this inward dive. And remember, as we go into this inner landscape of thought perturbations and vibrations and waves of emotion and flow patterns of feelings, that you want to become more attuned to your inner senses. Slow down your breath. Feel into the present moment and simply relax. Feel that subtle release of any tension that you have around your brain. And breathe into your brain. And as you breathe into your brain, you can say, breathing in, my brain smiles. And breathing out, my brain smiles. And then take the feeling into the heart center. And as you're breathing in, breathing into the heart feelings, going right into those heart-based feelings. Breathing in, my heart smiles. And breathing out, my heart smiles. And as you're breathing in, become aware of your whole body. And as you're breathing out, calm your whole body. And so as we go on our journey this morning, we want to take 3 simple rules as our traveling guide. One is, whenever we confront defensiveness or any kind of anger or attack thought within our experience, within the field of our consciousness in this service this morning, we will first recognize that's what we are experiencing. An anger thought, an attack thought, a defensiveness, whatever it is, we will recognize that constricted, fear-based, anxiety-based thought. The second rule or guide that we'll take along on our journey is that we will then, once recognizing it, will to let it go. Drop it, surrender it, lay it at the feet of our symbol for God or guru. And third, and most importantly, we will then open to grace and allow the darkness that once was that energetic patterning of a fear thought, an attack thought. We will ask for it to be transmuted and transformed and transfigured into a light presence within the field of our consciousness. And as we do this thought by thought, feeling by feeling, we will observe a lightening up, an increased transparency, and a melting into the infinite self. Until all of our boundaries, all of our defenses have been dropped, and we are truly free from the cage of concepts and false conditioning. So we pay attention to the inner space now, willing to recognize what's coming up and willing to let it go if it brings pain and suffering to ourselves or to others. We will end the world of war, thought by thought, and replace it with a world forgiven and at peace, beginning with ourselves here this morning. And with smiling hearts and smiling brains, you can stay within this flow of deep, slow breath, with eyes open or eyes closed, to listen to the poetry of Hafez. The first in our series of Sufi poems this morning, Calculated Malice. There is a bird of paradise, Huma, that comes close to earth but never touches the ground. Sometimes it so nears one, one has a chance to leap up and touch it. Those who have received its blessing from knowing its body firsthand all have something in common. Their minds never know any calculated malice, and thus are not weighted down. So, in fanciful fashion, Hafiz is saying that you are able to touch the blessings that are being showered upon you and to bring them into manifestation within your life when you clear your mind of calculated malice, of attack thoughts. So our attack thoughts, we can say on the flip side, are blocking the blessings from our life. That's the only thing that's doing it. It's not out there. It's in here that is causing the block of blessings to flow and have our lives shine with the beauty and the perfection of our own innate divinity. So we all must have something in common if we are to walk this world blessed. And that is, we will never again embody or want to know calculated malice. Okay? Now, I guess it's a good time to mention this. When we come to church on Sunday mornings, we're getting these concepts, right? And we're getting these teachings that in many ways are counterintuitive to the way that we've grown up, the way that we've been conditioned, the way the world thinks. And so oftentimes, like, there's a rewiring that goes on. I even smell some burning brain matter in the room at times because we're trying to get something that is so different in the way that it sees life. And we're working through our own jungle thicket of past learning and prejudice and what we've come to expect as reality. And these teachings disagree with it fundamentally so that we get rewired in the process and undergo this inner transformation. But what we have to deal with, like we're saying in this service, is that our past learning has become habitual, and we have these defenses in place. One of the defenses that is spoken of in the mind training of A Course in Miracles is the psychological term that's used is distantiation. It's simple. All that we're really doing in this defense pattern is we're distancing ourselves from the blessing. So remember, this comes back to like being unworthy, unconsciously, unlovable, whatever way we've calculated it. Now keep in mind, these thoughts that we are unlovable or unworthy, we were groomed in our upbringing to have them. We had people representing the voices and the behaviors and the actions that came at us seemingly without our control to instill in us, you are unlovable. You're broken. You're weird. Whatever the patterning, we allowed that to be something of our core identity. So we are actually inclined, like I said at the start of the conversation, to defend being broken, unlovable, weird. And when love gets too close, when blessings get too close, we instinctually, not thinking, not telling ourselves in linguistic thought, but instinctually distance ourselves from the love that is literally pouring in everywhere all the time. We're swimming in it. So how do we remove these blocks so that we can touch Huma and get that blessing? Well, first, no calculated malice. So give up the stories that you have where you have to seek vengeance for what others have done to you. Right? I think Sunday morning is a 60-minute plug for our Monday evening class, because these are really being introduced oftentimes, and I can't go and do justice to these ideas sufficiently. But on Monday, you get to sit in a circle, and we get to work through these layers in a very focused and beautiful way that oftentimes brings that aha. So, 7:15 tomorrow night. Here's another from Hafiz. Radiant in its sheath. Outside everyone's house is a great force that will someday attack. Many have been carried off, held for some kind of ransom, mortally wounded or made crazed. Who would raise a child and not prepare him for such an imminent battle? Who would ever write a book and not in some way make you aware of a strong opponent you will meet? A sword is most effective if it is never raised, but can turn radiant in its sheath and reflect a light onto your face that can still the anger in others. What is he saying? Everyone gets angry. Everyone is prone to attack. This is just inevitable that we feel these feelings, and this great force is at all of our doors. But we can do something about it. We can transmute it. It's just energy. If we remove the labels and the stories, and we no longer insist that we're unlovable, and we accept that we will spot these blemishes within our mind, be willing to let them go, no longer perpetuate them, no longer value them, no longer invest time and energy in them, grace can come in. And that energy that was once the anger field of energy will be made into a love radiance within us. Our own anger will be used to undo anger. The energy that was once the great force of our own anger is the energy that will actually disappear anger in others. That's what he's saying. A sword that never leaves its sheath but becomes radiant is that anger energy transmuted. And it's so powerful that others that get around this radiant field of your transformed power can no longer be angry within your presence. That's what he's saying. So that's back to that simple 3-part formula. You have to spot it, feel into it, be willing to have it changed, and then open to grace and let grace begin to flow in. That shield you hold. There is a shield you may still hold because of so many battles. I guess another conflict could begin any moment. So maybe lugging it about could be of some use. Or is it just an undermining habit? Does not it get heavy, so much so that you sometimes carry it on your head at noon? And then do wonder, with your insecurities so intact, about casting darkness and fear and shadow all about you. Even if the sun is out, if God is really all around in the middle of a beautiful day or night, all you see is darkness, fear, and shadow. Yes, how amazing that a small umbrella or an illusion held over your head or clung to can hide the stupendous fact of omniscient light. So again, Hafiz is saying light is everywhere. It's flowing into us at all times. You know, that echoes what Jesus says in A Course in Miracles. He says the love of God is flowing around you all the time. What we're trying to do, speaking of himself and the great teachers that are about opening us up, is that we want the love of God to flow into you. Not just around you, but into you, to infuse you. But we have to give up our defenses, our shields, these habitual patterns of conflict that we have carried in our life forever, it seems. And they're literally blocking the sun from getting in. Look, I don't know an angrier guy at times than myself. Okay, I will look for any reason to, get irritable. And it's a habit. And, you know, being with one of the happiest and wisest people on the planet, sometimes I'm just waiting for that magic wand of stardust, because that's what it feels like when I'm in those moments where she basically points out what Hafiz just pointed out. It's like, you're doing this to yourself. Like, this need not be. This doesn't have to be the way you're seeing it. And again, when I look at my anger, it's really me just taking myself out of feeling safe in that moment. This is what we're really going to be driving towards the end of our conversation to look at. We're going to look at a workbook lesson in A Course in Miracles. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. When I defend myself, when I go to attack somebody, even if it's justified, if I'm attacking them, that doesn't mean that you're stopping bad or destructive behavior, you're preventing somebody from harming another. That's not what we're talking about here. That needs to go on if it's happening in front of you. You don't allow people to hurt other people or themselves in your presence. That's part of being compassion. But you don't have malice or hatred or attack others for attacking others. And so when I look at the way that I am when I'm in an attack mode, I'm really not feeling safe and secure. My anger is sadness. And I think I speak universally here when we're really examining ourselves. We don't feel safe. And here's Jesus' tongue-in-cheek in A Course in Miracles. How could you feel safe when you perceive yourself as such a person in such a world? I mean, really, I don't want to bring it down any more than I am already, but how can you feel safe in such a world as such a vulnerable person? You would have to be riddled with anxiety and fear and unsurety. And of course, attacking is, at least in that moment, giving you the feeling like you're not going to let that happen to you or somebody that you love or care about. But what we're not seeing is underneath, whenever we're attacking, we're teaching ourselves, right? You're always teaching, and therefore whatever you're teaching, you're learning. So whenever we attack, or whenever we're defensive, we're teaching ourselves that we're weak and unsafe. Listen to this. He says safety. We want to feel safe. Safety is the complete relinquishment of attack. The perfectly safe are wholly benign. You want to wake up? You want to embody your divinity? Teach only love. That's the prescription. Be universally compassionate. Do not allow attack thoughts to have reality in your mind for anyone. And here's the rub that we oftentimes don't see. All of the stories that we have about the other people who deserve our ire and our attack, they're projections of ourself. So he says in the Course, All interpersonal conflict, that means conflict between people out there and you, originates first with intrapersonal conflict. In other words, you had to first attack yourself in order to see conflict going on in your life. If you stop attacking yourself, recognize how you're doing it through these thoughts and feelings and habit patterns, and then be willing to let it go and feel the love come back into your heart and teach only love to others, you'll get love back and it will increase and grow and strengthen. And then attack will literally be relinquished, and you will see you're not in a world of attack anymore because your attack thoughts were showing up as the world. Is this making sense? So on that note, I have come into this world to see this. Hafiz goes on, he says, I have come into this world to see this, the sword drop from men's hands even at the height of their arc of anger. Because we have finally realized there is just one flesh to wound, and it is His, the Christ's, our beloved's. I have come into this world to see this. All creatures holding hands as we pass through this miraculous existence we share on the way to even a greater being of soul, a being of just ecstatic light, forever entwined and at play with Him. I have come into this world to hear this. Every song the earth has sung since it was conceived in the divine's womb and began spinning from His wish. Every song by wing and fin and hoof. Every song by hill and tree and woman and child. Every song of stream and rock. Every song of tool and lyre and flute. Every song of gold and emerald and fire. Every song the heart should cry with magnificent dignity to know itself as God. For all other knowledge will leave us again in want and aching, only imbibing the glorious sun will complete us. I have come into this world to experience this. Women and men, so true to love, they would rather die before speaking an unkind word. Women and men so true, their lives are His covenant, the promise of hope. I have come into this world to see this. The sword dropped from men's hands even at the height of their arc of rage. Because we have finally realized there is just one flesh we can wound, and it is our own. So you know that old saying probably originated back in the 1960s. What if they declared a war and nobody showed up? That's what it will take And we will have to look into our own hearts to end the war that's happening on the planet, because we are the planet. It's our flesh. How magnificent is each and every one of us. We've been so self-limiting and then defending this little patch that we think we have within this isolated skin bag. It's not who you are. You are literally the seer, the process of seeing, and what's being seen. You are the infinite space in which everything is arising. When you wake up and own your power, you'll realize that you create by thought and feeling. And if you do it consciously, you'll realize that only loving thoughts and loving feelings are worthy of you. And everything else can be replaced. Actually, he says in the Course, has been replaced already, just awaiting your acceptance and agreement. As you teach, so shall you learn. If that is true, and it is true indeed, you must never forget that what you teach is teaching you. What you project or extend, you believe. Your only safety lies in extending only the Holy Spirit, because as you see His gentleness in others, your own mind perceives itself as totally harmless. Once it can accept this fully, your mind does not see the need to protect itself. The protection of God can then dawn upon it, assuring your mind that it is perfectly safe forever. And then he follows that with this. The only way to have peace is to teach peace. By learning it through extension, by giving it to others, willing it to be seen in others, it becomes a part of you that you know, because you cannot teach what you have dissociated. Only thus can you win back the knowledge which you threw away. An idea which you share, you must have. It awakens in you through the conviction of teaching it. This is why I am indebted to you. By you being here, by you listening to what I'm teaching myself, and if it has value for you, by you accepting it as yours and feeling that it speaks of truth, it rings of truth, we have just strengthened peace on the planet. And it goes out into a multitude of forms throughout the entirety of this inner spiritual internet or network. And people around the world receive the peace that's being fathered here. You see? I'm indebted to you because I need to know I have this. And so as I'm teaching it and giving it, you're allowing me, you're gifting me the opportunity to see that it's true for me. This is the way we heal the mind and bring it back to its true source of safety. Everything you teach, you are learning. Teach only love and learn that love is yours and you are love. So we cannot know we are love if we are defending ourselves from love, right? So this is why the whole point of this conversation this morning is to give up the defense system. Defund your own internal military industrial complex. Dismantle the weaponry that you have within your psyche. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. You who feel threatened by this changing world, its twists of fortune and bitter jests, its brief relationships and all the gifts it merely lends to take away again, attend this lesson well. The world provides no safety. It is rooted in attack, and all its gifts of seeming safety are illusory deceptions. It attacks and then attacks again. Does anybody have an experience of this world that's different than what was just explained? It's pocketed with momentary pleasures and fleeting joys, but he's giving you the context in which it's set. And if it's not your experience, go out of your bubble of upper middle class or middle class America and go anywhere else in this country and see the environment of what's going on in the world and in your mind. The world gives rise but to defensiveness, for threat brings anger. Anger makes attack seem reasonable, honestly provoked, and righteous in the name of self-defense. Yet is defensiveness a double threat, for it attests to weakness and sets up a system of defense that cannot work. Now are the weak still further undermined, for there is treachery without and still a greater treachery within. The mind is now confused and knows not where to turn to find escape from its imaginings. In another lesson within the workbook, he tells you that we are setting up the things that we defend against. We're making our own boogeyman and then defending ourselves against them. It's all within the imagination, and it's all because we have a secret, unconscious unworthiness to feel the love of God within the core of our being. And we're sad and we're angry about our state. That makes us very defensive and prone to attack. You do not realize what you have done to sabotage the holy peace of God by your defensiveness. For you behold the Son of God as but a victim to attack by fantasies, by dreams, and by illusions he has made. You're the Son of God in this story. Yet helpless in their presence, needful only of defense by still more fantasies and dreams by which illusions of his safety comfort him. So guns and missiles and biological warfare and chemical agents and, all of these ways that we've tried to secure ourselves are ways of trying to defend our own imagination, that we've made the threat real first within our imagination, and then we try to imagine ways to heal the threat. But remember, you have to become really clear with yourself that you want to end this, because there are other voices within the chorus that are pushing for this reality to continue. And if you're not flat-footed in this choice to give up all attack thoughts, you're going to be led astray. Another plug for Monday night. Defenselessness is strength. This is the finale here. Defenselessness is strength that testifies to recognition that the Christ is in you. Perhaps you will recall the Course maintains that choice is always made between Christ's strength and your own weakness. The choice is between his strength in you or your weakness when you see yourself distanced or separate from him. That's the only way your mind can be in fear and lack safety. You don't think he's in you. He's love, right? Pure, divine love. And it's your identity. So the only choice is your loving self or an image of yourself that seems detached and split off from his love. Now here's the rub. We make each moment that choice. This is, I think, your homework for the next week. Before you think or speak anything in this moment, this instant, you've already either joined as him in you, and you see a world in unity, or you've unconsciously perpetuated the split. You then look out from a fragmented, distorted self that now will think and feel and tell stories to itself of a separate world of defensiveness and attack and the need for it all. Before you look at anyone else, you've either crucified him and yourself, or you've resurrected him and yourself, brought them back home along with you. Now, that's what we're being faced with every instant. We're either coming home or we're running away, moment by moment by moment. And you know what's going to keep you habitually running away? Your sense of unworthiness and your fear that you then have to defend yourself against the threat of love. Am I speaking to anyone here this morning? Finishing. So is the story ended. Let this day bring the last chapter closer to the world, that everyone may learn the tale he reads of terrifying destiny, defeat of all his hopes, his pitiful defense against a vengeance he cannot escape was but his own deluded fantasy. Today our theme is our defenselessness. We clothe ourselves in it as we prepare to meet the day. We rise up strong in Christ and let our weakness disappear as we remember that his strength abides in us. Blue bag is going to go around. If you're joining on Facebook, you can donate to our service. The church and I are very grateful for that. Click the link below, and you'll be taken to a page where you would just say it's for the 8 a.m. service, and thank you very much for your generosity. Anyone have any feedback here this morning? Stephanie.
I remember years ago writing down on one of these gold pieces of paper in our pocket in front of our chair here. I'm pretty sure it was a quote from you, and it says, "At every moment we are appearing either as ego or as presence."
Every moment we are either appearing as ego or as presence, yes. And we're very grateful for the offerings. We bless them and charge them with the purpose to bring peace, happiness, and the awakening of all minds to the presence of God. And so it is. Amen. Okay, my friends, drop your guns. Be strong in Him today and defenseless in His safety. You can rise. We can close the service. Settling within the luminous heart. And we continue to be willing to let go of all thoughts that hurt and have them replaced with His presence and His love moment by moment, that we may see a world at peace and reborn in love. And then we will know that the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful day. Much love, peace, and joy. Namaste, my friend.